Florida. Winds up to 140 miles per hour have knocked out power to almost 25,000 people already, and millions have been told to evacuate their home. But many have also decided to stay behind and wait out the hurricane. Good evening, I'm Britt Hume, and this is On the Record. We have live team coverage now, including the forecast and reporters throughout Florida. Let's go right to Fox News Chief Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth. Rick?
Hey, Britt. Storm getting very, very close to Florida, at least the strongest of the winds. In fact, the hurricane force winds getting very close. The center of the storm right there at Freeport, Bahamas. They've been on the wrong side of the storm, the bad side, with the strongest winds, and I think we're going to see a lot of damage out of there. It's a town of about 25,000 people. Winds are at 140 miles an hour, sustained, and you can see the center of the storm right there. There's an outer wall, though, and that is getting very close. It's around 30 miles from Palm Beach. Palm Beach, you've got winds in the mid-40s, so at tropical storm force, but when you get this red, which is very close to getting on shore, we'll start to see the hurricane force winds, and that white that you see there, that's that major hurricane, 140 mile an hour winds. This is a future radar. You see the center of the storm here, 3 a.m. tonight, right here around Port St. Lucie, right offshore. The latest model run of this looks like it has tracked it maybe 5 to 10 miles off to the east, maybe a little bit good news if we saw that trend. You don't want to be on the right side of this storm. That's the bad side. Not that the left side's a good side, but it's worse if you're on the right side of it. And then we basically just see it hug the coastline. A lot of rain eventually Saturday up in towards South Carolina. Biggest thing we're concerned about is a storm surge, obviously. And this is one of our models you see where you see this pink here. That's 10 feet of storm surge. Some spots maybe up to about 12 feet. And the way you see the coastline, this little curvature here, that's where all of this water is going to be pushed into that area. And all of the little inlets and rivers that come out here across these kind of swampy areas are going to be seeing a lot of flooding going on. Rainfall totals obviously are also going to be very extreme. 7 to 10 inches across parts of Florida. When you get into Georgia and up across parts of South Carolina, I think we're going to be seeing some spots maybe 12 to 15 inches. And the track of this, very interesting. We're going to see it hug the coastline and eventually, unfortunately, pull back out here across areas of the southeast, maybe still staying some sort of a tropical system. Long time to worry about this. In the immediate, we have this damage here to Florida. If we did see this come back, say 5 or 6 days later towards Florida as a tropical storm of some sort, certainly problematic for the cleanup efforts that will be going on. But in the short term, tonight we're going to be dealing with this, and then because of just the way it goes on the coast, we have this all the way till Saturday, Britt.
Wow, Rick, thanks very much. The massive evacuations from South Florida have led to huge northbound traffic jams and turned much of the state's east coast now into ghost town. Fox News correspondent Steve Harrigan joins me now from one of those deserted places. Hi, Steve. Where are you and what are you seeing?
Britt, we're in Sebastian Inlet, and you're exactly right. It is a ghost town. Everything's boarded up. This is an old fishing town. They've been through storms before, but maybe nothing like this. That's why they are playing it safe here. People are either holed up in their houses or, like many, they've decided to leave. At each stage here, it does get tougher to leave. It gets tougher to move around. The winds here have just hit 40 miles per hour. That means officials are closing down bridges. When it gets a little worse, over 50 miles an hour, that means first responders will no longer be able to go out and help people. Of course, the worst case scenario for the entire state, something the governor has called potentially catastrophic, that would be a direct hit on Florida with 140 mile per hour winds, a storm surge of up to 10 feet. Just to put that in perspective, the last major hurricane that hit Florida was Wilma in 2005. That killed 25 people in the state of Florida alone and caused $30 billion worth of damage. So a real tough night for people all along the coast. We've been seeing them on the road and in hotels. A lot of elderly here. Very difficult for some of them to leave with walkers, wheelchairs, or oxygen tanks. And a lot of people in manufactured homes as well, too. They're going to have an especially tough night. On the one hand, they've got to ride out a potentially life-threatening storm. On the other hand, many of them openly admitting they could face the loss of their entire homes. Britt, back to you.
Boy, you got to feel for those people. Steve, thank you very much. We will continue to monitor Hurricane Matthew as it moves up the East Coast. Stay with Fox News for instant live updates when they're appropriate. Turning back to politics now, the Real Clear Politics polling average shows Hillary Clinton with roughly a 3-point lead in a 4-way race and roughly a 4-point lead tonight in a 2-way race. The betting odds continue to favor her to win by about, as you can see there, 3-1. All of this seems to be a direct consequence of the first debate, from which Hillary Clinton has gotten a lift in the polls. that is now also being reflected in the battleground states. Correspondent Shannon Bream now reports on our updated electoral map.
We have had some shifts in the electoral map this week. Colorado, which we felt was trending left, we actually have moved it to leaning Democrat from toss-up. We're also moving Georgia, previously a toss-up, but it's going the other way to leaning Republican. One more change, New Mexico, which was solid Democrat, now moves to leaning Democrat. That puts the overall totals at 272 votes in the Clinton column, 187 for Trump, and 79 votes still viewed as toss-ups in key states like Ohio and Florida. Remember, it's 270 on election night to win. There's been concern within the GOP that Trump could be a negative in some key Senate races, but polls show in some states current GOP senators fighting to be reelected are actually polling well ahead of Trump. For example, Arizona, where longtime Senator John McCain is up by an average of 16 points, while the average for Trump puts him just ahead of Clinton by about a percentage point. McCain hasn't exactly embraced the top of the ticket.
Honestly, I am not here to talk about Donald Trump. I mean, it's not something that, frankly, that I am here to talk about today. The issues, the election will be in November. The issues we're discussing today will be with us for a long time.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio has taken a slightly different approach, emphasizing what he sees as Trump's positives.
Unlike Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump takes seriously the threats from Islamic radicals and is committed to rebuilding our military. Rubio
leads his opponent by an average of nearly 6 points, but in that key battleground state of Florida, Clinton is up by an average of 2.4 points. Brett?
Thanks very much, Shannon. All of this certainly suggests that Sunday's debate is a big deal and a chance perhaps for Donald Trump to turn the tide, which had been running in his favor a few weeks ago, back in his direction. For some thoughts on that, we turn to veteran political strategist and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Hi, Karl. What do you think about Sunday night?
I think it's going to be a big night for both campaigns because Trump, look, the first debate was bad for Trump, good for Clinton, but more important than that, the 6 days following the debate were really bad for Trump, mostly self-inflicted wounds where he seemed to be focused, almost obsessed with a former Miss Universe. Now, that's sort of steadying up now, in large part because Mike Pence had such a good night and it caused Republicans to sort of breathe easy for a moment, but Sunday night is going to be really critical for Trump to have a good debate night where people say either he won or he came close to winning and held his own and projected an image that causes his supporters to say, we're moving forward and we're getting enthusiastic. One of the key things that happened this week is in the Fox poll, for the first time, the number of people who said they strongly supported Hillary Clinton eclipsed the number of people who said they strongly supported Donald Trump.
Yeah, I saw that, Karl. What do you think about the format? Obviously, this is going to be a kind of a town hall format, moderators asking questions from the audience. Does that help? Does that format help one candidate more than the other?
Well, it helps whoever can focus on the questioner, the person in the audience, and have an empathetic relationship with him that's observed by everybody who's watching on television. This is the first debate was in reality a conversation with the people on the other side of the lens, a direct conversation. On Sunday night, it'll be an indirect conversation with those people and a direct conversation with whoever is questioning out of the audience the candidate. This means it's a lot more difficult to attack the other person because you look really hot and angry. And it also means that how you relate to those people, sort of the body language and the things that happen in between the words that matter almost as much as what you say.
Yeah, I guess you have to kind of be personal with the people, try to call them by name and the rest of it. I remember George H.W. Bush at that famous debate in Richmond, which was a town hall style debate in which he seemed so uncomfortable and he famously glanced at his watch.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what?
Well, there you go, Karl. I mean, there are some do's and don'ts, aren't there?
Yeah, there are, and these are hard to prepare for because it's not like you've got the audience was out of the first one. The audience will not be there as cheerleaders in this second debate, but they will be there in a dominant way because you've got to develop that relationship with them, and your skill in developing that relationship and developing that rapport will be observed by everybody, and it's hard to practice that kind of thing. Trump is going to do a town hall meeting tonight with 155 supporters, so personally selected supporters. And that's a good way to do it. But just remember, the people that are going to be in that audience, selected by Gallup, aren't going to necessarily be your fans or your enemies. They're going to be people who are going to ask inquiring and
we talked to that
questions.
Republican chairman.
Carl, let me ask you this. We've noticed, and Shannon Bream was just reporting about this, that a number of these supposedly vulnerable Senate Republicans up for re-election this year are running ahead of Donald Trump in Florida, in Arizona. We're seeing it in Indiana and a number of other places. What's that all about?
Well, Donald Trump is his own guy, not the party guy. He's an independent. He doesn't strike people as being the Republican. That is to say, what he says and does isn't necessarily held to be that of the Republican candidates in the individual state. And so where they've been able to develop their own independent image and to describe to the people of their state what it is that they've done and what it is that they want to do, and to describe their opponent in that same frame, they've been able to pull away. We saw this most prominently in Ohio, where Rob Portman has probably run one of the best campaigns in modern history and has gone from being behind in July to being up by significant double digits in October. And it's because he's developed a strong image of who he is and kept an appropriate distance from Donald Trump. He's not run away from him. He's just said, my race is about me. Donald Trump's race is about him versus Hillary Clinton.
Carl, as always, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett.
One number to keep an eye on during presidential races is the outgoing president's approval rating. Often that can indicate the success of that party's nominee, or as, of course, in this case, Hillary Clinton. There's a new CNN ORC poll out tonight that finds President Obama's approval rating at 55%. That is the highest of his second term in that poll. Our nightly political panel now is here. Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and Susan Ferriccio, chief congressional correspondent of The Washington Examiner. So, Ben, you look at the right track, wrong track numbers in the polling, and they're all bad.
Yes.
People think the country's on the wrong track. The whole theme of the election has been it's time for, it's a change election, and yet there's the president, Mr. Status Quo himself, sitting at 55%. Interesting.
I think it is interesting, and there are a couple things going on there. One is that in terms of comparison to the current candidates that people seem to be so have so much displeasure for, I certainly think that that's helped benefit President Obama in the interim. He's looked better because of it. He hasn't been front and center ever since Donald Trump took the political stage. He has not been the biggest figure or the biggest fighter in terms of his squabbles with Capitol Hill. And then finally, I think that part of this really is that for people who support Donald Trump, we see how close they are to economic anxiety. There have been numerous studies that have looked at this. The awareness they have of the direction of the country is very, very negative. They're worried about the future. But that's not representative of the electorate as a whole. The electorate as a whole is doing fairly well, is not as much hurt by the economic anxiety that these people have experienced ever since the downturn. And I think that's at play in this number as well.
Susan?
I agree with most of that, too. And to add to it, I would say Michelle Obama is a very popular first lady, and sometimes that helps boost approval numbers for the president. He's been low profile.
Well, you do kind of have a whole marriage picture there.
Right.
The Obama family portrait is pretty coherent, pretty intact. It looks kind of a model family. And both Donald Trump, what's he on marriage number 3, and Hillary and Bill have had one of the most peculiar marriages of anybody's ever seen. So that may be a factor.
That's a factor. And of course, as the current candidates running are unattractive. We see that in polls. They have low favorability ratings, and Obama here he's not the focus anymore. And often when a candidate or a politician is no longer the central focus of the rabid press, their approval numbers improve. And I think that's why we see that here. Also, it's not fair to really compare him to Bush, who was, by the way, at about 27% at the time. We were mired in 2 wars at the time. That was a much different atmosphere. There are no.
It's not as if the world situation is exactly.
It's not. But it's not as close to us anymore, though, because we have so far fewer troops involved, or we're not as directly connected with what's happening in the Middle East as we used to be. Although, of course, terrorism is an ever-present threat. But I think he's far more kind of in the background. He's had a few international trips to elevate him, and he's also done a good job at making himself look on higher ground than Congress, whose approval rating right now is about 9%.
It's almost as bad as the media.
Right, and so even though he is part of the reason why there's been gridlock in Congress, which I can attest to being a congressional correspondent, I can also tell you, look what he's done. He's appointed somebody to take the place of Antonin Scalia, and Congress has refused to hold a hearing.
And
pummeling the Congress on that. So he's been able to take the higher ground, too. So if you couple that with the unpopularity of both Clinton and Trump, it doesn't surprise me at all that he's in the 50% range. I don't think you can get much higher than that with the disapproval and wrong direction polls you just referenced, though.
Well, stay right there with you. Both of you, please. Right now, let's speed read some other news in the world of politics. Donald Trump, once a campaign data skeptic, has now spent millions on data and digital services. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, convinced Trump to spend $11 million in August to help win votes. Campaigns try to gather up as much data as possible to raise money and to identify potential voters. The late former First Lady Nancy Reagan would have voted for Hillary Clinton. That is according to Ronald Reagan's oldest son, Michael Reagan. Reagan tweeted out this message, quote, "My father would not support this kind of campaign. If this is what the Republican Party wants, leave us Reagans out. Nancy would have voted for HRC." Nancy Reagan, as many of you remember, died in March of this year. A court win for Donald Trump, but this one comes from the United Kingdom. A British Muslim activist had tried to sue Trump for £10 million, that's about $12.6 million, over anti-Muslim comments the Republican nominee has made. At the heart of the case was Trump's claim that London police are fearful about entering some neighborhoods because of radical Muslims. Today, the judge in the case dismissed it, saying it was not legally actionable. President Obama has just set a new record today. The president commuted the sentences of another 102 federal prison inmates. The White House says most of these inmates were people charged with drug-related crimes. During his presidency, President Obama has commuted 774 sentences. That is more than the previous 11 presidents combined. Meanwhile, boxes and boxes of Hillary Clinton emails have vanished. Where did they go? Our Catherine Herridge reports on that next. Also, that Category 4 Hurricane Matthew has hit Florida. Governor Rick Scott is warning the storm could kill you. Stay with us for live coverage of that storm as Matthew moves up the coast. New revelations in the Clinton email investigation show that boxes that contain some of Clinton's emails are now missing. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here. Catherine, what is this all about?
Well, Brett, you know, the FBI files were released over a week ago, but there's so much detail in those files if you simply just read them and look for those nuggets of information. And we were reading one of the interviews in the last couple of days from a State Department sort of junior employee who said that there were originally 14 boxes of Clinton emails that were to be picked up from her lawyer, David Kendall, who you know well from your years of reporting. And when they went to pick them up, there were only 12 boxes. So 2 boxes are AWOL, and it almost feels like a lawyer kind of joke. Like, how many lawyers does it take to count 12 boxes or 14 boxes, and 2 are missing?
And there's no explanation?
There's no explanation in the files.
Could it be that they found that they didn't need 14 boxes and could get all the emails into 12?
It could be that they consolidated them, but it was a mystery what happened to the 2 boxes of the emails. Remember, they printed out everything. Right. It was not electronic. They had to rescan it.
So where is that particular phase of the probe? Now, is there a big hunt going on?
I know. This is like you don't really know what happened to the boxes in the end, whether they were consolidated or not, but it's another one of these loose threads in this investigation. Another loose thread in these documents is there was what I would call kind of classification code monkey business at the State Department. And the person who was leading that, based on the FBI interviews, was a senior manager, Patrick Kennedy. That's also a name that you know very well from your years of reporting in Washington. And it's alleged in the documents by a State Department employee that Kennedy wanted the codes changed on some of the emails from the B1 code for classified to something called B5, which is the executive privilege exemption, and it's important because it
shields. And when did he want to do this?
This was right at the height of the release of the Benghazi emails to Congress. So this is
information already being sought.
Correct.
And he was trying to alter the classification notations on them?
That is the allegation in the documents, and if you change it from B1 to B5, I feel like I'm playing Clue, like I'm Miss Scarlet with like the revolver in the library. You know, I mean, it's just like, it's like a crazy story, but they wanted to change the codes to B5, which means it's not.
You can't see it.
I mean, no one in the public, no one in Congress. It's like putting it down the ultimate black hole.
Wow, Catherine.
It is a wow, yeah.
Thanks for
You're welcome.
Go back and dig through some more emails.
Thank
it's
you.
like hunting for hidden gold.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
is, okay.
We're just 3 days away, of course, from that highly anticipated second presidential debate. Donald Trump wants tonight to be a kind of preview, or at least a rehearsal. We take you to the campaign trail next. Also, as we've noted, millions of Americans are in the path of that deadly Hurricane Matthew. We'll have an update soon as Florida braces for the worst. This is a Fox News alert. Hurricane Matthew is closing in on the United States. That deadly hurricane pounded the Caribbean, left more than 100 dead in its wake. And Florida is currently bracing for what could be the most powerful hurricane to hit there in decades. WTVT Fox Tampa Bay reporter Aaron Mesmer is on Florida's East Coast up in Juno Beach. Hello, Aaron. What are you seeing there?
It is getting really, really bad out here. Deteriorating, I think, is the word that we've been using over the last hour or so. But the one leading up to that, catastrophic. That's the word that you keep hearing people in Florida say when they've been warning people who live on the East Coast especially to brace themselves for this storm. Now, the wind has been picking up. We're talking about 140 mile an hour winds eventually. You can just see these trees up here. I know it's getting dark, but that's what it's like right now. And those are consistent gusts of wind. I mean, it's just like that over and over again. And earlier we saw 40, 50 mile an hour winds, but I think we're getting well past that right now. 1.5 million people in Florida are under mandatory evacuation orders, but a lot of those people stuck around. 6,000 here in Palm Beach County alone. And I mean, we're about, if you're not familiar with Florida, about 12 miles or so north of West Palm Beach. So this is a pretty populated area. And those shelters, those emergency shelters that they opened, those are filling up very, very quickly. But you've heard Governor Rick Scott, Florida Governor Rick Scott, he said, this storm will kill you. So those folks who decided to stick it out, it is now time to hunker down because that storm is coming. Every now and then we get this gust of wind that just about knocks you off your feet. It's getting hard to see. It's almost impossible to hear. And we were down at the beach, Britt. We had to move ourselves back up here to where we are right now because it was so bad down there. It was just whipping us around, and it just was getting too dangerous for us to stay down there.
Aaron, good job there. Thank you. Stay safe, my friend, and hope you get out of there okay. And we'll keep checking on Hurricane Matthew. Let's get back to the 2016 race. And right now, Donald Trump is in Sandown, New Hampshire, and a town hall style event is getting underway. The Trump campaign hopes this will serve as a kind of practice for Sunday's town hall style presidential debate. Fox's campaign Carl Cameron is at that event. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Britt. Well, you're right. He just got here in Sandown. In fact, he hasn't actually begun the town hall because his motorcade just pulled up behind the Sandown town hall, and a fairly big overflow crowd has now raced to the back of the building to see if they can get a glimpse of him before it goes inside. This is being called a town hall style meeting, and it is taking place in the Sandown Town Hall. But by New Hampshire standards, it's a little bit different than your average town hall, which normally in New Hampshire it's expected that they are public. Anybody can come and go, that the questions are impromptu, they haven't been screened, they haven't been looked at, and it's usually just the candidate and the folks. In this particular one, there are 155 invited supporters who are inside, and the press, and that's it. The questions have been written down on 3x5 cards and given to a moderator who is Howie Carr, a noted conservative radio host down in Boston, which is in itself something that's fairly interesting. There's lots of conservative radio hosts in New Hampshire, but he chose to go to get one in Boston. And this is, by the Trump campaign's own assertion, part of his prep for the Sunday night debate in St. Louis, which will be town hall style. And Trump has been preparing for this in a variety of ways, but this is the first time that he's had an actual town hall of sorts in quite some time. He's done TV town halls with Sean Hannity and Anderson Cooper, etc. But this is going to be with the real folks.
Carl,
Hi.
Help me out here. It's a little unclear to me how you prepare for a town hall event in which you're asked questions by people who may or may not be for you, and by moderators who are certainly not, among your supporters that you know of. Questions you don't know ahead of time. How do you prepare for that by doing 155 of your own supporters with questions that are fielded in advance by your campaign team?
It's a great question, and it's not one that I'm certain I could answer fully on behalf of the Trump campaign. But what I would suggest to you, Britt, is that what they're trying to do is get him more acclimated and prepared to interact with the audience. Part of the town hall style debate at the national level for the presidency is just as much about the answers to the questions, but also about the emotion in it, and whether or not any candidate can really connect with the voter who might be telling them a story of a personal trial or tribulation, and show some empathy, show some ability to really relate to average folks. Trump doesn't have much problem doing that to his supporters and rallies. They are in sync for sure with the folks that he goes to these big rallies. This is supposed to be an opportunity for him on Sunday night in St. Louis to address people who might not agree with him and see whether or not he can have an amiable conversation with them and try to persuade them to his causes. That's not exactly what's going to go on tonight. This is more like a rehearsal and getting him acclimated and accustomed to just talking to people face to face with the heat on.
I can see how it makes sense to interact with the audience in a way you haven't done in previous debates. That makes a certain amount of sense. Carl, thank you. On the other side of the political aisle, meanwhile, Hillary Clinton held no public events today and said she, of course, is focused on Sunday's debate. And Fox's Jennifer Griffin is live in Clinton's hometown of Chappaqua, New York. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Britt. Well, the Clinton campaign is very worried about Florida tonight. They are telling their campaign workers there to not worry about campaigning. They can campaign after the hurricane is over, just to worry about their safety tonight. Earlier today, campaign manager Robbie Mook had a conference call with reporters in which he called on Florida Governor Rick Scott, a Trump supporter, to extend the date for voter registration to beyond October 11th in Florida in light of Hurricane Matthew.
Our hope would be that a little bit more time will be given for people who were expecting to be able to get registered before the election, and we certainly expect that the governor and local officials will make that possible.
Hillary Clinton attended a fundraiser in Manhattan today at the St. Regis Hotel just around the corner from Trump Tower. It was the only break she has scheduled from debate prep. She has taken today and tomorrow off the campaign trail to prepare. Her staffer, Philippe Reines, is again playing Trump. This time, prep is not all about mock debates, however, but connecting to audience members as they ask questions in the town hall style format. Her campaign manager, Mook, said today they expect Trump to come better prepared than last time and more disciplined. Mook said they do not expect Trump to come armed with the personal and harsh attacks that he has been promising, a reference, of course, to Bill Clinton's past infidelities. But there have been fireworks between the two campaigns today over Florida. The Clinton campaign announced that it was postponing an ad buy with the Weather Channel after Republicans criticized them for trying to advertise during this potentially deadly storm. And then Mook on that conference call accused the RNC chairman of playing politics with the hurricane. So a lot of finger pointing between the two campaigns tonight with regards to this hurricane in Florida. Britt.
Okay, Jennifer, thanks very much. Bill O'Reilly is here next. I'll ask Bill what he would do during Sunday's debate if he were Donald Trump. Also, millions of Americans, as you've heard, have been told to get out of Hurricane Matthew's path. Not everybody's leaving. The hurricane forecast is coming up. Everyone seems to think it's crucial for Donald Trump to perform well in Sunday's debate to have a realistic chance to restore the momentum that shifted to Hillary Clinton after the first debate. One who thinks that is Bill O'Reilly, who knows Trump and has interviewed him often. I'm pleased to be joined by Bill himself. Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Thank you for having me in.
Tell me your thinking about this debate and about what you think, knowing Trump, he can do and needs to do.
Well, it's a different situation because you have the regular folks around him in a town hall. So it's not two people at the lectern talking to the TV. He's got to talk to the people in the room. That could help him because he feeds off that energy. Now, they're independent voters. They were selected by Gallup, and they're going to ask two candidates questions along with the moderators. So I think it's an advantage to Trump to have people in there where you can see them responding to him. But he has to be gentler. He can't be the mean guy, all right? And that's, I think, as people are drumming that into him. Look, you can say bad things about Hillary Clinton. In fact, you have to. But you can't do it in a way that's threatening or over the top. And that's a discipline that he'll have to bring to if he wants to win.
Now, you know Trump and have known him since well before he became a candidate, right?
Yes.
What's the private Donald Trump like? I've talked to him on the phone, but I don't really know him. What's he like?
He's not a guy who's that bombastic in public, in private. I mean, when I go, oh, Trump's a racist, or Trump's this, or Trump, never saw that. Never in a million years did I see that, all right? He was polite to people. He likes attention. He's got a thin skin. You know, if you jab him, you know, he looks at you like, what are you? And that's...
Well, I've seen you interview him. You don't have any reluctance to poke at him.
No, but I don't have any relation to poking anybody.
Well, I understand
Right,
that.
that's what I do.
But he doesn't seem to.
Well, sometimes he does. He told me I needed to see a psychiatrist after the Detroit interview. But I think he understands that I'm not trying to hurt him.
Right.
See, if he feels you're trying to hurt him, then he overreacts, in my opinion, sometimes. But I'm not trying to hurt him. I just want to cover the campaign in a fair way. He knows that.
Well, you seem to deal with him in a sort of a shoulder-to-shoulder way that suggests, that you've known each other a long time.
Right.
How would you describe your relationship with him?
I mean, I'm a friend. We have common ground in sports. So we go to the Knicks and the Yankees, and once in a while he'll go to the lowly Mets, but I have to drag him there. But it's sports, and he likes politics, and when he wasn't involved with it, he would ask me all about what this one is like or that one is like, and then I would ask him the same thing in business and showbiz, because he does that. So we would both basically give each other information, not gossip, but good, solid information. But I've always liked him. I never saw him as the malevolent person the New York Times and Washington Post are trying to portray him as.
Now tell me about why you're in town. You're in town because there's a screening of the movie made out of
Killing Reagan.
Right.
Yeah, there are so many reasons I'm in town. Number one, I want to try to straighten Washington out because it's ridiculous. Number two, Killing Reagan, which will be seen October 16th on Nat Geo, is having its premiere tonight. So I'll be with that. I'll be with the Swells.
That's where at the museum?
Yes, that's with Ola Holly, me, and Tim Matheson plays Reagan. Cynthia,
I see Tim Matheson on the screen in his role now.
Right, Cynthia Nixon is Nancy, and they do a great job. This kid playing Hinckley, he's great. Yeah. Anyway, it's from there. And then we have Killing the Rising Sun. So your colleague Chris Wallace,
That's the new book.
I did a little Fox News Sunday thing with him. Sold 500,000 copies in 3 weeks. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Chris had read the book. I haven't gotten to it yet. He told me he thought it was very good.
Yeah, and Chris, he doesn't have a large concentration span. It's hard for him. So if he got through it and liked it, it's really good.
Yeah. So 500,000. Wow.
Yeah.
And when it hit the stands, when exactly?
It's what?
It's how long has it been out?
Been out 3 weeks. We sold 500,000 copies in 3 weeks. It's amazing, and it's because people want to know history, but they don't have time to read 800-page books on Martin Van Buren.
Right.
They want it, and they want it quick and entertaining, and that's the way we give it to them.
Right. Bill, it's nice to see you.
All right, thanks for having me in.
Yeah, you bet. And Hurricane Matthew, as we've noted, is forcing millions of people to flee the coasts. But as the sun sets in Florida, it may be too late to evacuate. The forecast coming up. As we've noted, Donald Trump is in New Hampshire tonight in what is being considered a kind of dry run for Sunday's presidential debate. Let's take a brief listen.
Hillary Clinton, including catch and release, another terrible practice, have allowed a massive influx of drugs into New Hampshire and, frankly, into states all over our country, almost every state. And it's really fueled the tremendous heroin and drug crisis that we have. We're going to close up those borders, folks, believe me, and I promise that to you. In New Hampshire, more than anything else, I said, and I talk about it no matter where I go, and I mentioned this state, because it was really the first glimpse I got at how serious a problem we have. They're poisoning our youth. They're poisoning more than our youth. They're poisoning everybody. But they're poisoning our youth. It's tough enough out there. Our youth doesn't have a chance with what's happening, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. And we're going to help the people that are so badly addicted. We're going to help them.
Well, you get a little sense of the flavor of it. He appears to be reading questions and from the cards that are presented by the audience and making his responses. We're monitoring this event. If news breaks out, we'll break in. House Speaker Paul Ryan, meanwhile, says the Paris Climate Accord, whose ratification President Obama has been celebrating, is illegitimate. His statement said, quote, President Obama has once again acted unlawfully by signing an international treaty without Senate ratification as required by the Constitution, end quote. Our nightly political panel is back. Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and Susan Ferriccio, chief congressional correspondent of The Washington Examiner. Susan, has Orion got a point here? Is this document really worthy of being called a treaty?
Well, not really.
Why
It's
not?
more like an executive agreement. There are treaties, and then there are these agreements that are not totally binding, and it was worded in a way. See, Obama knew he would not get ratification by the Senate because of the terms of the deal. So they worded it in a way to kind of skirt Congress and to make sure that it could be done legally without Congress having to ratify it, which of course would never happen. So in other words, some of the things that are mandatory are things like reporting and exchanging information. The requirements there aren't any. It's voluntary, and it's one of the reasons many people have criticized the agreement.
Yeah, I mean, so what we have here is an agreement that even the extent that it goes into effect can be canceled by the next president. Is that right?
Well, you don't have to participate in it because each country sets the terms for, say, emissions reduction.
Right.
So each country sets it, and who's the president? They set the terms of what those emission reductions are going to be. There's nothing requiring China, say, to stop building coal plants or to reduce emissions.
They're basically agreeing to reduce their emissions.
And they're agreeing to report things, too. It's more like a reporting document more than anything else.
The point that I would make about this is that President Obama would like this to have the force of a treaty because he wants this in place in order to shore up the various regulations his EPA has put in place over the course of his presidency, many of which are legally questionable and are designed to put us on the path toward doing the work on emissions that he wants to do. But President Obama and no one else, no one, not even the president, will say that over the course of the next half century, even if all of these countries abided by this agreement, that you would see a lick of difference in atmospheric conditions or temperature or anything like that. This is really more about him using an international agreement to shore up what he's done here at home.
That's an interesting take on this, isn't it?
It sets the tone, really, for what the country here, what we should be doing in terms of trying to reduce emissions. That's a tough stand to take with the Republican Congress, who they already feel the president has used executive overreach to implement things that are binding, like reducing emissions in a way that has shut down many coal plants and other things that they want to take Obama to court over this stuff because they think it's so.
Suppose the next president takes office, as you've described, and decides he don't want to do any of this. The consequences are, Ben?
The consequences are a lot of angry journalists, I think, mostly.
It's non-binding. We still have to report and exchange information about emissions. There are parts of it that are binding, but again, it's not the part about actions taken. It's part reporting what you're doing or not doing.
Part of its binding is not about actions, right?
That's correct. That's the only way he could do it, because otherwise he would have needed Congress to ratify it. There's no way that was going to happen.
Password, Ben.
It seems to me that this is just another example of how Obama is trying to keep his degree of executive overreach in place after he's gone. It's a real open question whether that's going to be the case or whether we'll see some rollback.
And legacy building.
Thanks to both of you. This is a Fox News alert. Tens of millions of Americans in the path as we've noted of powerful Hurricane Michael. That hurricane has already hit Florida, is on its way north. Fox News chief meteorologist Rick Reichmuth has the hurricane event. Rick?
Yeah, it has kind of stopped a little bit here right across areas of the Bahamas. Freeport, Bahamas, has been being pummeled for about the last hour, and the storm has not really moved much here. I will tell you, it is getting closer. Winds right now in the mid-40s in West Palm Beach. That is solid tropical storm force winds, but we're getting very, very close to the hurricane winds. And there's the center of the storm. It is moving in this direction, but that band that you see right there has winds that are likely about 100 miles an hour, and that is just offshore, about 30 to 35 miles offshore from West Palm Beach. As this moves towards the north, this band will still continue to rotate in, so I expect to see the winds well in excess of hurricane force in West Palm. That will probably take a couple of hours before that gets there. This is a future radar depiction of it, and you just kind of follow the center of that, and you see we still expect to see this thing hugging right along the coastline. If this verifies, we're talking about a huge range of land here from South Carolina through Georgia and down into Florida that is going to be dealing with a direct hit from a Category 3, Category 4 storm. Rainfall totals are going to be extreme. Some spots well over 15 inches, but a lot of areas in that 5 to 10 range, and that goes all the way up into South and North Carolina. Be ready for that. But in the short term, as this moves on shore, we're also going to be dealing with that storm surge. I think areas around Port St. Lucie to the north of that, especially Daytona Beach up towards Jacksonville, dealing with a storm surge eventually that is probably in excess of 10 feet, something they really have never seen in this area. So we don't exactly know what kind of damage, but it is going to be pretty extreme. Britt?
Okay, Rick, thanks very much. Looks like people are going to have to flee all the way to Indiana to get away from the thing, given that path. Fox News Miami reporter, WSVN Fox Miami reporter Nicole Linsalata is in Melbourne, Florida, where the wind is picking up. What are you seeing down there?
Well, just to give you an idea, Melbourne is in between, say, Cape Canaveral and West Palm Beach, and a lot of the local meteorologists are really expecting for conditions here to get a lot worse over the next few hours. Right now, though, the wind is just fairly brisk, not a lot more than that. We're at Melbourne Harbor, and I can tell you, though, that the folks who own these boats here, who have been out here earlier today just making sure they're secure, are really pessimistic about this storm. You were talking about storm surge earlier. That's really what they're afraid of. They're afraid of the high water here. Many of them are feeling that these boats may not survive what happens in the next few hours. Now, let's talk about the wind really briefly. Right now, like I said, it's sort of just brisk here. Not very bad, just a little bit of rain. But once again, this has been this storm has been really so unpredictable in many ways. So a lot of the folks here who are in central Florida, although they are not used to this kind of storm, say that they're really just trying to be prepared as best they can for whatever this storm brings. And as I mentioned, a lot of these folks here who own these boats are really afraid of what they might see in the morning. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay,
in
Nicole,
Melbourne,
thank
Florida,
you.
Nicole Linsalata, back to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Stay safe down there. Fox News will continue to track the hurricane throughout the night, as you've probably noticed. And coming up, my fashion choices apparently are not loved by some folks on Twitter. We'll read some mean tweets with a sartorial spin next. The viewer feedback, it seems my outfit last night got people going. Joe O'Kelly tweeted, "Really? Brown suit with a blue tie? Who dresses you?" To which I replied, "I'm sorry, madam, I was wearing neither tonight. I don't even own a brown suit. I recommend you have your TV and eyes checked." Not everyone was convinced, though. Andrew Thurber tweeted, "I see a brown suit and blue tie also." And Brenda said, "I've noticed the poor choice in ties and shirts before this." Other viewers disagreed, however. Text JAL tweeted, "I was watching tonight and told my wife how much I liked your green tie and light-colored sport coat." Why, thank you. And Emerson Houck emailed, "Can you please tell me where I can buy a jacket like the one worn by Brit Hume during his show tonight, Wednesday, October the 5th? That was last night. And finally, all this obviously amused my friend, the veteran journalist Andrew Malcolm, who tweeted, "Brit Hume, accused of wearing a brown suit, denies involvement. 5 takeaways from the controversy. Hashtag brown suits matter." Please keep the feedback coming, folks. We really do enjoy hearing from you. You can tweet me at Brit Hume or email ontherecord@foxnews.com. That's about it for tonight. The Bill O'Reilly Factor is up with Bill next. Of course, as you saw earlier, he's here in Washington and will be raising an interesting question about the Obama Justice Department. In the meantime, we leave you, as always, with our political quote of the day. This one from Winston Churchill, who said, quote, "The inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. The inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of miseries." We will be back here at 7 Eastern tomorrow night. We hope you will, too. In the meantime, don't forget Bill and The Factor. They're next. And stay with us, Fox, all night long for live coverage of Hurricane Matthew. That's it for us. Good night.